Good morning. The much awaited summit meeting between American President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping concluded recently in San Francisco. In my assessment, there is good news coming out of this summit both for China and for America, but not so good news for India, which I will explain in the video now. After the summit, Biden held a press conference where he made 3 points. But before doing that, he made it very clear, totally mindful of the Chinese red line, he said that America abides by the one China policy on Taiwan. His first point was on war avoidance, where he said that both sides have agreed on regular military to military contacts to resume them. Now, these military to military contacts will happen at 3 levels. The topmost level, Biden said that now I can pick up a phone and call up my Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. So that is war avoidance at the highest level. At the second level, the two ministries of defense will interact with one another regularly. In the case of America, it will be the Pentagon. In the case of China, very unlikely that it will be the Ministry of National Defense, which is a ceremonial office. It will most probably be the Joint Staff Department. Now, when the two countries are interacting at this level, at the operational level, highest operational level, certainly 3 things will always be on the table. One is nuclear weapons management, space management, and cyber management. At the lowest level, the tactical level, where the grey zone operations happen, which have accelerated in recent months, rather since a year. So, Biden said that both countries have agreed to resume maritime security consultation mechanism. In other words, the American freedom of navigation patrols will still continue, but perhaps the frequency will be less. There will be fewer chances of an accident, and both sides now will be in contact, regular contact, to ensure that there is no escalation. The second point Biden made was on war itself, where he said that for the first time both sides have agreed to discuss artificial intelligence in war. When we talk of artificial intelligence in war, there are 3 things we are talking of. This is a software upgrade, artificial intelligence, in which, and it is happening so fast that either a human is in the loop, or the human is on the loop, or the human is out of the loop. When we say on the loop, we are talking of he has his finger on the emergency button. Now, artificial intelligence in war has 2 aspects. Use of AI in nuclear weapons. It is almost certain that both sides will agree, and it's a very positive development to make sure that either artificial intelligence is not used in the nuclear command and control, which of course is unlikely, but that the human is always in the loop as far as nuclear weapons are concerned. The question is about artificial intelligence in a conventional war, where I am not convinced about what the 2 analysts or some analysts have been talking about. That the 2 sides will discuss avoidance of killer robots. Now, robot, as we know, is a physical manifestation of artificial intelligence. We can also call it an artificial intelligence body. And killer robot means that the human is out of the loop. That means there is complete autonomy in the robot. A robot can be anything. It can be a missile. A robot can be a humanoid robot. So, complete autonomy means that the task will be given by the human being. After that, the human being disengages completely. The robot on its own decides how to do a task, how to execute it, and finally does it in the best way that is possible. Perhaps even outsmarting a human thinking on that particular task. So, when the analysts say that both sides want to talk about killer robots, well, it's a good thing to talk, But the fact of the matter is, the whole idea of artificial intelligence in war is how to close or how to reduce the OODA loop faster than the enemy. OODA loop, as we know, is the observe, orient, decide and act loop. The kill chain that we call. How do you close it fast? Now, if you want to close it fast, obviously the human has to be out of the loop, which is precisely so many Chinese analysts have been talking about, that eventually what will happen in a conventional war is a singularity will be seen in a conventional war. Well, this is still some distance away, but this is precisely what is likely to happen even when they talk, because a software update is not tangible. It will be very difficult for either side to know whether the human is in the loop, on the loop or out of the loop as far as robot is concerned, but so be it. The third point he made was about the America staying in a competition with China without a confrontation. Now, what this meant was that America will continue with what it is doing. It does not want decoupling. In any case, it cannot have decoupling. Because when you see the trade between the two sides, it is close to $700 billion annually. Of that, 80% are the Chinese goods which are getting exported to America. China, in any case, as we all know, is the largest manufacturing hub in the world. So decoupling is not there, but the Americans have been talking of the de-risking, and they are talking of a small yard and high fence. So what they are looking at is a competition in the use of artificial intelligence on the civilian side, which is the fourth industrial revolution, to make sure that the Chinese do not beat them in the fourth industrial revolution. That is the whole game. Now, it suits the Chinese also. How? I'll just come to that in a while. But from the American perspective, it's a win-win situation. Because while they will continue with the competition with China, they have made sure that a war does not happen, for which they are not prepared right now in West Pacific, and certainly not in the Indo-Pacific. If you see the timelines given by the American analyst and their retired veterans, they are talking about 2027, when the Americans would have formed up their integrated deterrence in Western Pacific and in the Indo-Pacific by 2030. So having cooled the possibility of a war against China, the point is that today America is deeply enmeshed in two big regional wars, and that is where it has to pay attention now. As far as the Ukraine theatre is concerned, it is more or less certain that it is towards the fag end of the war. The Ukrainians simply do not have the stamina for a counter-offensive, which perhaps will come in a month or 2 months from the Russian side. It is very likely, as most analysts are saying, that by the beginning of 2024, the war may end on Russian terms. If it happens that way, which is likely, then NATO gets discredited with huge implication, but this is a different subject. Now, for the Americans, the other war which has started, for which they were not prepared at all, came as a surprise to them and the world, is the Israel-Hamas war. And why it is dangerous is because, unlike Ukraine, where the NATO credibility is at stake, here the American credibility is at stake. They are directly involved in this war. And Biden said in the press conference, answering a question, that he has suggested personally to Prime Minister Netanyahu that eventually the end of this has to happen with a two-state solution, to which the Israelis will never agree to. So which direction the war takes, we do not know, nobody knows. But what is very likely is, or what looks very clear is, that with each passing day as the American credibility goes down in this regional war, the credibility of the Chinese and the Russian, it is shooting up. And then, of course, the Americans are also busy with their election year. 2024 is the election year for them. and they have other domestic problems also. So the long and short is, how much can America devote the time, capabilities and energy to the Indian side is an open question. Now see things from the Chinese perspective. Chinese have made sure, as they also build up their deterrence in the West Pacific as well as the Indo-Pacific, they also have made sure that there is no immediate war with America, which in any case they don't want, because their entire strategy, let's call it the grand strategy, is based on peace, development, one world, based on the Belt and Road Initiative. That is what they are looking at. But the problem that is coming to them is India. Because India, piggybacking on the Americans and the American power, has come to the conclusion that it does not need cooperation, it need not talk with China, and it is in competition with China, and if there is a confrontation or a conflict, it is even prepared for that. This is what the Indian government has told the Indians. And the Indian military has repeated the same thing to the people, which of course is not true. Now, if the Chinese decide that all right, because after all they are also building up a parallel world order. When we talk of order, we are talking of institutions. For example, when the American says rule-based order, they are referring to institutions that they created after the Second War, like IMF, like World Bank. A similar order is being created where the global south has got attracted by both the Russians and the Chinese in the shape of BRICS, New Development Bank, AIIB, SCO. This is the order that they are creating. And India is a member of these, but India is hampering the entire strategy of their world order. So, what if China decides to go to war with India? Because after all, there is a disputed border. There is a standoff going on for the last 3 years. In fact, it's gone into the 4th year. And if there is a war, today China has the capability, the capacity. Capability, that means it's an overwhelming capability for which they have trained also in the Western Theatre Command. It has the capacity, it has the political will, and most important, that the Chinese always look very carefully is the geopolitical environment for war. They don't want war, but a war could be something that they may consider because of the opportune geopolitical environment. Recall the 1962 war. The Cuban Missile Crisis between America and the Soviet Union started on the 16th of October 1962, lasted 13 days, which was critical period. And the PLA started the war with India on the 20th of October 1962. It is a quirky thing to say, but let me say it. Because after all, the Chinese analysts keep reminding many of them to the Indian side in their articles that look, if you go to war with us, then you just remember 1962. Okay, let's add 62 to 1962, it becomes 2024, which is next year. And if I am doing a military appreciation, I would say, okay, the winter months, December, January, February 2024 is opportune time for the PLA because they will campaign at the operational level of war, unlike the Indians whose expertise is at the tactical level of war and where the climatic conditions make a huge difference. Now, I am not saying here that Chinese will go to war in January, February. What I am saying is, as part of a military appreciation, that they get 10 benefits by going to war with India without taking much time. Let me read out 5 of them, which is there in my book, The Last War, which came out in August last year. 1. A PLA war with the Indian military will be a short war, decisive war, and demonstrate Chinese resolve to reclaim its territory. Now, this is for the benefit of the Americans. 2. A war will humble India, resulting in a unipolar Asia, an important step for China to move towards global leadership. 3. Without the benefit of India's geography and its large military, its sensitive location, the US's Indo-Pacific strategy in the South Asian subcontinent and the northern part of the Indian Ocean will flounder. Next, China's Asia-Pacific security architecture, the entire strategy, whose success depends on the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, will get a push, will get an impetus. And last, not the least, I'm just reading the fifth one, is that China will get a first mover advantage in the artificial intelligence backed war against its main adversary, the US military. Now, I want to say something here. I'm not saying, or this is the conclusion that many of the people will draw, that I suggested that a war will happen in January or February of 2024. Well, this is something, it is not my prerogative, neither your prerogative. It is something that the Chinese top leader Xi Jinping will decide. All I'm saying is that as part of an appreciation, everything is there for them. The geopolitical conditions are opportune, capacity is there, capability is there, political will is there, advantages are there. So please take this seriously. Thank you.